This is Ilona Goanos, and I am the author of The Pebble in Your Shoe. And today I have Sean Chavis with us. She's the author of Redressing here on Substack. And, I like to bring interesting people on lives who are doing interesting things. And despite all the obstacles, they just keep thriving. So, Sean, welcome. And I'd like you to just give us a little intro about yourself.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. So I am a former journalist. Now I'm an independent I'm a content marketing consultant and strategist. And I got into fashion just a couple of years ago. I had obesity all my life. At my max, I weighed over 300 pounds. I decided to get weight loss surgery, and I lost 140 pounds. And so when I reached that point, I was like, great, I get to build a new wardrobe. And when I really started doing it, I was like, oh, this isn't just, doing a big, huge shopping spree and stuff the closet. Like, I really wanted to think about how do I want to express myself. And it was like the first time I had a chance to do that. So I am kind of using my Substack newsletter to do that exploration out loud. So I'm not a style consultant or anything like that. I'm just someone who has felt disenfranchised from style and is now trying to embrace it.
So tell us how did this start? Like your weight loss journey. When did you decide to go on it? How long have you struggled with obesity? And so how did it come to be?
Yeah, so I've had obesity ever since I was a child, ever since I was like 7 years old. That was like the first time when I was 7, that was the first time my mother took me to see a dietitian. And I'd been dieting ever since. So I had a lot of yo-yo, tried every diet under the sun, even as a preteen and teenager. And so I when I was in my 30s, I became the diet editor at Health Magazine. And one of my editors asked me to write an article about weight loss surgery. And in the process of doing that article, I learned how weight loss surgery can really help ameliorate type 2 diabetes. And so I thought to myself then, if I ever develop type 2 diabetes, I'm going to just go ahead and do surgery. And I didn't do it then. At the time, I weighed around 220. I was fluctuating between 220 and 240 pounds. And I kept thinking I could do it on my own. And at that time, science didn't really understand that obesity is a chronic disease. So I just thought I could keep trying on my own. I was a diet editor. I had access to all the diet books. I had access to interviewing, some of the best experts in weight care. And so, anyway, fast forward 10 years, I weighed over 300 pounds. My doctor diagnosed me with type 2 diabetes, and I kind of remembered that promise to myself. And then in fact, my doctor, she was my primary, she said, I think you should think about weight loss surgery. And so it took about 2 years from that point for me to finally get into the operating room, just because, insurance would cover it and then insurance wouldn't cover it. And, I switched surgeons a couple of times. Surgery, the insurance wouldn't cover it. And without insurance in Atlanta, it was going to cost $30,000 out of pocket. So I kind of, I ended up having weight loss surgery in Tijuana. And it cost about a little around a third of what it would have cost in Atlanta. One of the best medical care experiences of my life. And then it took me about a year and a half to lose 140 pounds. And of course, there are all the in between sizes during that period. And even though I'd been disenfranchised from style, I was really excited to finally think maybe I can finally reach my goal weight and I can finally. And then when I got to that goal size, I was like, I don't know what to wear. Like, I don't know how to shop. One of the weird things to me was like, I'd always worn one size fits all belts because of my size. And once I got to my final size, I was like, belts come in sizes? Like, I
Mm, no,
didn't know.
well, the choices are limited, right? Like they just give you the basics, right? Like if you're anything that but the standard size, you get like what you get. You get what you
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So that's and then I really was kind of like, okay, now this is for real. Like it's not just pinning stuff I like on Pinterest. Like I really get to buy stuff. And that made me go like, okay, what do I really want to wear and what is my style? Like I had choices that I didn't have before. And so that's what kind of prompted me on this journey of, discovering my style and exploring all the things. And it was self exploration too. And I've come to really recognize that number one, I didn't realize how disenfranchised I was from style. And number two, for me, I've made a connection between being able to express yourself in clothes is just one more step to it's almost like rehearsing being able to express yourself in other ways. And I feel like that's really important for me. And I feel like that's important for like I'd love to see more people be able to express themselves through clothes and practice expressing themselves because I think that makes it a little bit easier to express yourself in other arenas too. And I feel we're in a time now where all of us need to speak up for ourselves or our communities and feel liberated to speak up.
Agree, 100%. Can we just back up a minute? So,
Uh-huh.
I didn't know you went to Tijuana, first of all, and, what year was this? And were the GLPs out then? Like, was this all part of so first of all, like, Tijuana, like, was it that much more cost effective to have the surgery there, or did you just feel better with the doctors and the program?
That's an interesting question because it was a little bit of both. Number one, it was much more cost effective than, I paid out of pocket, but it was much more cost effective than having surgery in Atlanta where I was living then. It was a third of the cost. And the other thing was, before I had kind of like I had a surgeon in Atlanta. I couldn't afford him. So I have a sister in Oklahoma and she said, "Hey, there's a really good bariatric surgery center here. They have a good reputation." And in fact, I had an obesity medicine specialist in addition to my primary. An obesity medicine specialist works with pharmacology. They don't do surgery. But I've been working with him for years and he recommended both the surgeon in Oklahoma and the surgeon I ended up going to in Mexico. But I tried in Oklahoma first because I thought I could stay with my sister while I was recovering. And this was right during COVID, like, this was right as COVID broke out. And Oklahoma City got to a point where all 4 major hospitals had no beds because of COVID. The hospitals, because of the culture there, were not enforcing that medical professionals should wear masks and take precautions. So they got to a point where it was so rampant, like, they had a joint press conference and said, "There are no beds left in Oklahoma." And my surgeon in Oklahoma the next day put out a press release and said, "The real epidemic is not COVID, it's obesity." And I was just like, "Okay, I'm done." Because, if you have obesity, you probably have some comorbidities like I'm sorry, that's the wrong word. You probably have some coexisting conditions like type 2 diabetes or high blood pressure or heart disease or some of the other things that we knew then that if you got COVID and you had those conditions, you were probably going to have a worse case of COVID. And I would have loved to hear the surgeon say, "Hey, yeah, there's no beds in Oklahoma, but we have, a facility that's just for surgery and we're taking all these precautions." And there was none of that. He was just like, "The real epidemic is obesity, not COVID." And I was like, "Okay, like that's not what I want to hear." So then I thought, "Okay, I'm going to go to Mexico," which was my other but so number one, the place in Mexico had much better COVID precautions and protocols. So I felt comfortable there. The other thing for me was both the surgeons that I looked at in the United States, Atlanta and Oklahoma, you go through like a pre-surgery program where number one, they want you to lose some weight, which I know that doesn't make sense. Like, why would they want you to lose weight to have surgery to lose weight? But they want to shrink your liver because your liver sits on top of your stomach and they have to move your liver in order to do the surgery. And if your liver is, they want you to shrink your liver a little bit so it's a little easier to move your liver. And so it's a special diet. It's not like a regular weight loss diet.
Yeah, hadn't
Yeah.
heard this, yeah.
Yeah. And then they kind of also teach you how you're going to eat after you have the surgery. There's like a, 6 to 8 week program, while your stomach is healing. And then there's the second phase, which is like how you eat for the rest of your life. So I was going through these programs with both of these surgery surgeons in Oklahoma, in the United States, and both of them handed me binders of processed foods. Like it was like, here are all the protein bars, protein shakes, protein waters, protein snacks, and it was just all processed stuff. I'm a former cookbook editor. I used to do cookbooks for Weight Watchers and Cooking Light. If you remember Cooking Light magazine, they were really into, fresh food, and eating seasonally. And I was like, this is not aligned with how I like to eat. And the philosophy of the surgery center in Tijuana was completely different. Their philosophy was that obesity is in part a disease of malnutrition and that you have to nourish your body back to health. So she was like, we're not doing, the dietitian there was like, we're not doing any processed anything. You like, my pre-surgery diet was I had to eat 6 cups of leafy greens every day, like dark leafy greens. I was eating like kale and collards and things like that. And, everything had like, her philosophy was eating natural whole foods. And that aligned with how, and the other thing was culturally, I felt like she really kind of helped you incorporate your cultural foods better than the surgeons, even in Atlanta. Like, um,
Yeah.
because in Atlanta, like you're in the deep South, I thought that they would, get like, okay, I like peanuts, the regional things that you like to eat. And it really wasn't that. And the dietitian in Mexico got that. Like she was like, I love Mexican food. She was like, yeah, you can incorporate these things, I like plantains, like you can incorporate these things. So she really kind of helped me figure out how to eat the way that I like to eat and eat to support the surgery that I was having. So those are the reasons why I ended up going to Mexico.
Okay. Well, and also, what people might not know about you too is that you were an army brat and that you have a comfort of going different places and that you even are living now in Mexico.
I
Uh,
am.
yeah. So tell us how you ended up living in Mexico after this dramatic weight loss.
Sure. So you did ask when I did the weight loss surgery. I did that. It was 4 years ago. And so it took me about 1.5 to 2 years to get to my goal weight. Um, and honestly, like I've been wanting to live abroad again for a long time. And I've been talking about going to Mexico for 10 years for real. But at the time, like at the weight that I was, like, you know, waffling between 250 and 300 pounds, it really took a toll on everything. I had knee arthritis, I had back arthritis, my knees were bone on bone. I had type 2 diabetes, I had, just all kinds of difficulties. It was hard. There was a time when I was walking 3 or 4 miles a day and my weight was so much that it was hard for me to walk a quarter of a mile without needing to sit down because of the pain in my back. It to me, like so I got the weight loss surgery, I lost weight. I ended up getting both of my knees replaced. So that was part of the journey too.
In the
But
United
all
States, sir.
Mhm. Yeah, I did do the the insurance would cover that. So I did that in Atlanta. With somebody at Emory. And anyway, like that, all of that, like losing weight, having weight loss surgery, getting my knees replaced, um, you know, um, and the other thing you asked about GLP-1s. So my obesity medicine specialist that I mentioned earlier, before I had surgery, when I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes and I, said, okay, I think I'm going to do the surgery. He not only recommended surgeons, he said, before I had surgery, I want you to plan on starting a GLP-1 3 months after you have surgery. And I know that like that kind of seems like why do you need surgery and medicine? Like, and a lot of people, and there's trends where you're seeing surgeries are going down because people are using pharmacology first. GLP-1s were just like they've been around for a while, but at the time Wegovy was out for treating type 2 diabetes. And they were still kind of like Ozempic wasn't a big thing just yet. But anyway, so he was like, okay, 3 months after you have surgery, I want you to start a GLP-1. And so the reason is because obesity is a very complex disease. They have now identified that there are 300 to 500 different genes linked to obesity in some way. Then it's genetic. It's 70% of cases are genetic. Then there are other factors. It could be hormonal, which GLP-1s are addressing like a hormonal issue. Your body is supposed to make natural GLP-1 to help manage your appetite and your blood sugar. And some people who have obesity, either your body is not making enough GLP-1 or your brain is not sensitive enough to it. So the synthetic GLP-1, Ozempic, those drugs are basically a synthetic version of what your body is supposed to make. So sometimes for some people it's a hormonal issue, for sometimes from people it's a brain chemistry issue. So there's multiple factors, and then your body can also change. Like like you're treating obesity in one way, and then your body's like, oh well, we need to get back to that other weight. So this is the set point theory that you may have heard of. Your body will go like, well, no, I need to get back to the other weight, and so it'll start changing things to make you regain the weight.
To the
So
heavier. Okay.
yeah, so obesity is both progressive and relapsing because of how complex it is.
So it's
So
sort of two-pronged, right? Because they fixed one thing, but there's the other thing that still needs to be adjusted, correct?
yeah. And I also had PCOS, which is now called PMOS. Um the
Okay,
PCOS.
yeah, a variant thing, yeah,
Yeah,
polycystic
so now they've realized it's a metabolic condition that's not just about your reproductive system, but it's about your whole metabolic. It's
ovary.
very complex. So women who have PCOS are more likely to have obesity, are more likely to have arthritis, are more likely to have, type 2 diabetes, inflammation, all of these things. So because of that, my obesity medicine specialist was like, okay, you have PCOS, you have type 2 diabetes, you've had obesity, you've got arthritis, you've got inflammation. 3 months after you have the weight loss surgery, start the medicine too. So that way I had like multiple ways to treat all of these conditions that I had.
Okay.
So that's why some people just have such a complex case of obesity that they need to have multiple interventions. It's almost thinking like, some people who need cancer treatment need both surgery and chemotherapy. Or some people who have heart disease need to have a bypass and then they need to take medication to prevent, more heart or, manage some of the other conditions around heart disease. Like you take statins or beta blockers or whatever.
Mhm.
So it's almost kind of like that kind of approach where you can
I
have multiple treatments to help manage the condition.
know. Okay.
And it's worked for me. I've been able to keep my weight off since I reached my goal.
So take us on that journey then from post-surgery. I don't know, I assume that you lose weight, like, right away and then the clothes don't fit, and then it starts there?
Yeah. So right after you have surgery, um, it comes off pretty fast. Like it usually here's the weird thing, like the immediate days right after surgery, because you like typically you're on like a liquid diet 24 to 48 hours before you have surgery. Because you need to have your system empty. And then you're on a liquid diet for 10 days after because your stomach's still healing. But you can actually gain weight because your body's retaining fluids. So the first few days after surgery, your weight might go up a little bit, but then that first month to 6 weeks, you drop it really fast. Like I think I dropped, and that doesn't happen for everybody because your body's in shock and is going, what's going on? But typically a lot of people lose a lot of weight the first 4 to 6 weeks. So I think in the first 4 weeks, I lost about 15 to 20 pounds. And your brain has a hard time catching up with your body when you lose weight that fast. So some people don't see that their body is changing. And sometimes like I'd been heavy for so long and I'd been on so many diets, like I didn't even count it like a real diet unless I lost 10 to 15 pounds. Like I was just like, it like to me, like I didn't even get excited about being on a diet and thinking, okay, it's going to work until I'd lost 10 to 15 pounds. And I'd be like, oh, okay, I might be onto something. Like that's how, but so when I started losing weight, other people saw the weight loss in me before I did. Like I still thought of myself as being my bigger self. And then, I started noticing it in my clothes and I like after like the first 4 to 6 weeks, then the weight loss slows to like maybe 2 pounds a week. It just depends on how heavy you were when you started.
Oh,
Um, People who are heavier, like maybe around 350, 400 pounds or more will lose weight at a faster rate when they first, the first few months after having surgery, and then it slows down. But yeah, so I think by about 6 months after surgery, I'd lost around 50 to 60 pounds.
wow.
Yeah. So yeah, I had like all these interim clothes, where I knew I was transitioning, so I didn't need permanent things. So I used like I used thrifting, like I bought some things from ThredUp and some other online thrifting outlets. I rented clothes, like there's places, online where you can rent clothes. And so I did that. But that kind of gave me an opportunity to kind of experiment with what I wanted my style to be. And like, at first I was just kind of like mimicking things that I pinned in Pinterest, just to kind of try to get a feel for things and what I wanted. Um, but yeah, and through that period, I really like I had a hard time like even after I reached my goal for a while, there were times like I got down to where like I can wear like a size 8 or 10. And it just depends on the brand. But I got to a point where like I could pick up a pair of my new jeans in like a size 8 or 10, and even though I've been that size for a while, like sometimes I'd pick it up and go, this is too small. Like, I'm sorry for that. But so it took a while for my brain to catch up with where my body really was. And that can be a bigger problem for some people. It can actually be a mental health issue where you do need counseling for it. It's called body dysmorphia. And some people really struggle with seeing themselves at their higher weight when they look in the mirror and not recognizing how their bodies really are now. Um,
It's about the example about going into an airplane seat and how that changed for you.
yeah, like when at my heavier weight, Um, I really I felt so much shame because I mean, you saw the media how like people were like, complaining because there was somebody sitting next to them who was larger and they couldn't put their armrest down or just felt uncomfortable, or had bias against somebody who was larger. Or airlines making people buy two seats and things like that. So I always felt super conscious about getting on a plane and I would try to like shrink myself and make myself smaller. And, even after I started, and there were times, like, when I was at my heaviest weight that I needed to get a seatbelt extender, and that there's shame and stigma associated with that. So after I started losing weight and I didn't need those things and I like, my hips didn't push the armrests up, I still felt like I had to shrink myself, and it took a while for me to go, "No, I'm okay. I can relax and my hips don't touch the armrests," and, like, there's extra fabric on the, seatbelt, so that was, like, a big mental thing for me to get over, just, like, I can relax, I can be myself, I don't have to try to make myself smaller, and I had to kind of mentally tell myself, "Okay, you can relax, it's okay. Like, you're not touching anybody, you're okay."
You feel like this is like an on like the shrinking, like, for example, I'm 5'11".
Uh-huh.
I didn't wanna be that bit tall, like, that was too tall for me, and I'm like I always, like, walk with hunched shoulders, trying to be smaller, but and now I'm like, "Stop, I have hunched shoulders," and I'm like, "This is what I did to myself," right? Because I wanted to be smaller. Do you feel like you have some long-lasting side effects too that catch up with you besides, like, the, airplane seat?
I do, like, I feel like I carry myself differently. Like, I think, like, I carried a lot of shame with me at my higher weight, um, and I've had to kind of learn to, put your shoulders back and stand up tall and, it's okay to be yourself, you're not like, I just felt like there was, like, a lot of eyes on me because I was bigger, or, I didn't, I would only imagine what people were thinking because of how heavy I was, and I've had to kind of relax about those things. One of the other big things is just relationships. Like, people who are at heavier weights, um, are often isolated, experience social isolation, or don't get to experience romantic relationships as often. And people go through counseling for that, or even just being touched. Like, you don't often experience touch, like someone hugging you or holding you or things like that. And it can create um the effect where you're so used to not being touched, then when you actually are touched, you kinda, it's shocking, and there's therapy for that. So some of those things, like, I've been dating since I lost weight, but I felt really conscious about, you know, when you go through weight loss surgery, it doesn't make you look good. Like, I don't look good. I'm
What
small, but
just
like, oh, right, the skin, everything sags. Like that, I have a lot of extra skin, like, and so, like, I felt conscious about that, so, like, it's I tell people, get the weight loss surgery to save your life, and that's what it does. It saves your lifespan, it saves your health span. It does not make you look good. Like, it's not cosmetic surgery. Like that, like, looking good to
Right.
a lot of people is gonna be another thing. And for some people, like, skin removal is actually helping them with health too, because, like, I know some people who have had weight loss surgery, and they started out at weights that were like 500 pounds or 600 pounds. So the extra skin that they're carrying is also like an issue for, like, it pulls on their back muscles and their spine. And so it can cause skin irritation and issues and things like that. And so it can be really painful to have that extra skin. So it is a health issue as
Mhm,
well as a cosmetic issue. But for those of us who are like started at lower weights of obesity, it's a cosmetic issue.
mhm.
And so, like, I tell people, save your life first. Don't worry about, yeah, because everybody worries about extra skin. It's part of the journey. Like, so save your life and then,
I know a
yeah.
lot of can relate to the extra skin even without the weight loss surgery. It's
Mhm.
gravity and aging, and
Yeah.
it is. So let's concentrate about how we dress ourselves then. Like
Yeah.
what let's talk about, like, you like bright colors, but did you wear them when you were heavier? Like, did you how have you changed in your approach to dressing?
Um, that's a really good question, because that was like part of the mental, because when I was heavier, and this is what I liked about your essay too, because you talked about how, um, like, when you were growing up, there were times when you were told, just wear it, like, just get it, and that was where I was, like, I was just like, okay, I may not love it, but it fits. Just get it, and that was kind of like, my mother would take us back, me and my sisters, for back to school shopping, and I would always be in tears or feel like I couldn't find anything I liked. And my mother was like, "You know what? That fit. Just get it. Let's go." And so that's kind of how I approach shopping for clothes. Like, it just fits. And then, I was kind of like, oh, I should wear black because it's slimming, and, or, there weren't a lot of choices for color. So I really just was in the mode of, I just buy things because they fit. If it fits, it's okay, whether or not it really reflects who I am. And then so once I was losing weight and I was close to my goal weight and I was kind of exploring what I want to do, then I started like looking at, okay, what colors do I like? And what styles do I like? And, like, what do I want to say when I get dressed? Like, I really hadn't thought about that before. Like, what do I want to communicate? Um, I hadn't thought about, I read this book, about fashion psychology called Big Dress Energy. And she incorporated a quiz that a lot of fashion psychologists use, to determine the proximity between your clothes and yourself. And I was reading this quiz in this book, and there were questions that came up, and they brought up things that I'd never really thought about before that I now consciously think of before. Like, do your clothes reflect your culture? I never really thought about that before. When you get dressed, do you look in the mirror and go, I feel comfortable in my clothes? Like, do you feel good in your clothes? Like, not just like, are you comfortable? Are you physically comfortable in your clothes? Is anything too tight? Is anything pulling? Like, I was just like, it covers my body. I'm gone, and I never really stopped to think about that. So all of those things change how I shop now. So I really kind of like to have a little bit of a 70s vibe in my clothes. I'm always wearing hoops, and then I love color. I got into color. My mother used to be into color analysis. I don't necessarily like, I do think like the color analysis for me, does a little something, but it's kind of a wonky science. So I don't to me, the benefit that I get from color analysis really is I love color so much that I'd wear everything. So I need some restraint. So I stick to my little color palette and everything goes together and everything.
Monster coat.
Oh yeah, the
Oh my gosh, that would have been awesome. You left it behind.
pardon?
You left it behind, the Cookie Monster
No,
coat?
no, I have it with me.
Oh,
Yeah.
got it. I thought you were
Yeah. You can get the coat up. I love that coat.
yeah.
I don't have many opportunities to wear it. I'm in Mexico City, but,
Oh, right, right.
yeah, I couldn't wear that coat
Right.
fine.
Yeah.
That coat has almost become like a neutral for me, and I know that's weird, like, because it's such a hot fuchsia pink, but the way my color like, it goes really well with blues, it's almost become like there's someone that I follow on Substack. I love her, Asta, and her Substack is called Fit Happens. And she had a post where she was talking about how some things may not be considered a neutral color, like it's not black, gray, tan, gray, navy. But it functions as a neutral in your wardrobe. And I think that coat functions as a neutral for me.
Yeah. Someone just said in the comments, Carl
White
said
shirt.
white shirts on women is powerful. But like so a white shirt is considered like a basic, but I recently heard, and this makes me very excited, that animal prints are neutrals. And I'm like, of course they are. Like I love changing and stretching the old stories. Like animal prints are beige and black and white. I mean, why
Uh-huh.
not? So yeah,
Absolutely.
I love thinking about it in a different way. And I love also the pattern mixing that we see now, the stripes and the polka dots and the plaids and just like thinking outside the box. And I think this is a perfect time, certainly for someone like you on this journey and like all of us really, that now to think creatively for yourself, like how to express yourself. And one of the things that Shakayla Forbes Bell, who wrote Big Dress Energy, which is a really good book if you're interested in reading about, she said, dress like you're the main character in the story. And I thought, oh my gosh, but I am the main character in my story. So why am I just pulling out random stuff in my closet when I leave the house?
Right?
I'm the person in the story. Like, what does the person want to convey? I just
Exactly.
book was great. I really like the way she reframes stuff.
Yeah, I like the idea of, like, creating your own like, thinking about who you wanna be, and then how does that and thinking about what your narrative is, what is your story, what is that might be aligned with your values or what you feel like is your purpose in life, and what story are you telling as you're, embodying that purpose or, your values, and then how does that person show up in the world, and what does that mean for your wardrobe? Like, all of that, like, I one of the reasons I moved to Atlanta was because it's such an empowering place for African Americans. And there are people like John Lewis, who was my congressman for several years before he passed. Stacey Abrams, all these the whole culture of Atlanta. It really kind of shaped um that story that I told myself and how I want to show up, and then that in turn informs how I how I buy clothes and how I style myself.
Mhm.
So I think it's important to kind of think about, what's important to you? What is your purpose? What are your values? What do you want to share with people? Like I love giving people some joy, and putting smiles on faces and, bringing some energy to the room. Like in my work life, I like to be the person who not only has like the strategy, that might be predictable, but I always also like to have a wild card, And so, you can use clothes to kind of support who you are. And I think that's really important. I also think there's an important connection between being able to express yourself with your clothes and just being able to express yourself in the world. Like if you can get dressed every day and rehearse expressing yourself, it's gonna be that much easier to express yourself with words when you're talking with someone, or whether you're writing or in whatever arena you're in. And I think that that's an important part of claiming your voice is being able to dress in a way that expresses who you are.
Mhm. So, like, this shift from being grateful, "Thank God I have something that fits me," to intention, and then you talk about, related to what you just said, the joy capsule? Is that what you call it? So
Yeah.
ha tell us about what that means.
Yeah. So, everybody says you have to have a capsule wardrobe, right? And so that's kind of where I started. Cause remember, I lost 140 pounds. There was nothing in my closet that I have one dress that was a Zuri dress. And those swing dresses, you can kind of, you can get away. So, but other than that, everything had to go. And so I was rebuilding everything. And my capsule wardrobe before had been mostly black, and just kind of boring and not really, it was just just get it because it fits wardrobe. So now I was like, I want to dress in with joy. I want to make myself happy. And, like I want to feel like for me, like dressing was like the one thing I could do for myself before I go out and go to work. So I was like, I want that moment to be something for me. So what do I want to be when like I want to feel something in my clothes rather than okay, I'm wearing the black, blazer and pants again. Um so instead of kind of like the neutral capsule wardrobe, black, gray, tan, white, um, maybe. I was like, okay, what colors do I really gravitate toward? I used my color analysis to kind of help formulate that, but then I also kind of picked colors that I really enjoy. So for me, it was navy, red, white, pinks. I have a lot of pink in my wardrobe. Um, and I have different shades of pink. Like I think there's pink, the power color, and pink that can kind of be almost kind of like a subtle neutral. Um, so that's kind of like my core and some greens, excuse me. And I just started building my capsule wardrobe around those. I think navy, so very flexible. Um, I just started kind of building my capsule wardrobe around those colors and building those pieces and then going out from there and also kind of like interpreting different ways. I wish I could bring some pieces out that like I've got um there's some pieces that I have from Ghana and Kenya um and that have those colors in them. So I have and then I have things like this blouse that this is one that I got from a thrift shop in Baltimore that just kind of has this little '70s vibe to it, and it's got you can see it's got, like, some interesting pattern to it. So, so I've found ways to interpret the color in different ways in terms of reflecting my culture, like or reflecting, I even consider I'm a '70s kid, and I love '70s music, and, there are things about when I think about the '70s, for me, it's just like, a really empowering, fun time, great music, great films, things like that. And so I like giving a little nod to the '70s.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, so those are ways that I interpret my culture and my background and my history and clothes with those colors.
I wanna mention we have only about 5 minutes left, and if anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask Sean, please type it in the chat. Um, anyway, let's talk about, your Substack and the direction you're going and your Substack is for and the community you're building there.
Yeah. So, I started my Substack about a year and a half ago. It's called Redressing. And I originally just started kind of like as a creative outlet, and I thought I was going to be writing for other people who've gone through extreme weight loss, either from weight loss surgery or GLP-1s. And it turned out like it's becoming this place where anybody who's dressing a body that's changing, which is all of us, like our bodies just change as we age, um, can find a place to kind of um connect with your identity and yourself and who you want to be. It's a space where you have permission to go on that self discovery journey. I am not a stylist. I have not studied fashion formally in any way. I'm not like a fashion editor, never been. I'm just sharing my journey of exploring things bit by bit and trying to put together my wardrobe and inviting everybody else to do that too, and just kind of creating a space for that. So, yes, there are people who have gone through weight loss like I have. Some people have gone through smaller amounts of weight loss. Some people are going through weight gain and, adjusting to that and processing that. Then I've had other people like I have a friend who has vitiligo, which is an autoimmune disorder that attacks your pigment, so your skin will depigment over time. And she was gracious enough to talk about how that's impacted how she dresses and her color palette. I have to say hi to my friend Donna. We've been friends for a long time, and she popped in. Thank you. And then there are women who are following me who said that they've had mastectomies, and that's impacted how they dress and how they buy clothes and how they feel about buying clothes and how they how they feel in their clothes. So there's people who are another friend who's also on Substack, Amanda Bray, who does the publishing spectrum. She and I did a live. She's neurodivergent, and she talked about how being neurodivergent impacts her wardrobe. Some people who are neurodivergent, they're very sensitive to different textures, or they don't like a lot of heavy thing, like they don't like a lot of heavy jewelry, or they don't like things that are tight on them. It's very irritating. And so we had a conversation about how being neurodivergent impacts how she shops clothes and how she styles herself, what she feels good in. And then there are actually retailers who create clothing lines or sell clothing lines for people who are neurodivergent. And like sometimes seams can be irritating, or hems can be irritating. So this is a place where we're going to be real. Like nobody looks the same. Like your body does not freeze when you're at that perfect, whatever 25 fantasy. Like our bodies change over time. We change. We get older. Things shift. We have babies. And so this is the place where we can like acknowledge, like what we're going through, embrace our style, not feel like we have to be disenfranchised, but really reconnecting with our style. So that's what I'm writing about. And it's been fun. I'm coming up, I'm doing some things on shoes because, um, I had feet problems with my weight. I've always had wide feet. And then since losing weight, I've lost the fat pads on like you lose weight on your feet, so you can lose the fat pads. And so my feet hit the bones hit a little bit differently. And so that's impacted how I wear shoes. But like, like why do like shoes that are orthopedic shoes have to be, boring? And so I'm going to be writing about shoes and how can we have cute shoes and still take care of our foot health. So, those are some of the things that I'm exploring.
Well, just so you're aware, as you age, you lose more of the fat pad in your foot. It's not even just that. So,
Mhm.
more things to come. Is there any like couple minutes, 1 minute left? Any advice you want to give people about fashion or anything you've learned?
I think just take it slow and give yourself room to explore and to really think about how you want to show up. I think like that first step is like acknowledging how being disenfranchised from fashion and style for whatever reason that is, like acknowledging that and like just saying it out loud or writing it down so you can really see it and look at it, and then you can start to address it. Like it's hard to address those things if you don't really acknowledge it first. And I know that can, like, for me it was kind of like a shocking process. Um that just kind of, takes you back a little bit. But once you do that, then you can start to change things for you in the way that you want to show up. So I think just really give yourself a lot of time and patience and grace.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much, Sean. It's been a pleasure. You're so easy to talk to. Everybody head over to Redressing and sign up for her Substack and join that community. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks for coming. Have a great
Thank
rest of your day.
you.
All right. Bye bye.
Thank Bye bye.